On the morning of August 16, 1942, a United States Navy blimp lifted off from San Francisco Bay with 2 men aboard. 5 hours later, the airship drifted back over the California coast, struck rooftops and power lines, and collapsed into a residential street. Its cabin door was open. Its radio still worked. Its parachutes and life raft were still aboard. But both members of the crew had vanished. No confirmed witness saw them leave the aircraft. No bodies were recovered. And more than 80 years later, no one can say with certainty what happened aboard the Navy's ghost blimp, L-8. The disappearance occurred during one of the most anxious periods in American history. The United States had entered the Second World War only months earlier, and Japanese submarines had already operated off the West Coast, attacking ships and even shelling targets in California. The possibility of an enemy submarine appearing near San Francisco was not treated as fantasy. It was considered a real military threat. To patrol the coastline, the Navy used aircraft that could remain over the ocean for long periods and move slowly enough to search the surface carefully. Among them were non-rigid airships, blimps. L-8 had begun life as a civilian Goodyear advertising blimp named Ranger. After the attack on Pearl Harbor, the Navy acquired it for coastal patrol duty. The airship was approximately 150 feet long, held aloft by helium, and powered by 2 engines mounted on its control car. It was slow compared with an airplane, but it could remain airborne for hours, circle suspicious areas, and carry weapons against submarines. L-8 had already taken part in a remarkable wartime mission. In April 1942, it flew out to the aircraft carrier USS Hornet and lowered vital equipment to the ship before the carrier launched the famous raid against Japan. Holding a blimp steady over the deck of a moving carrier required skill. The pilot responsible for that flight was Lieutenant Ernest DeWitt Cody. Cody was 27 years old and regarded by his commanding officer as a capable and dependable pilot. Beside him on the August patrol was Ensign Charles Ellis Adams, 38, who had approximately 20 years of experience with lighter-than-air craft. Adams had served aboard some of the Navy's great rigid airships and had helped rescue survivors following a major airship disaster. Neither man was an inexperienced beginner. At 6:03 that Sunday morning, L-8 departed Treasure Island in San Francisco Bay. The mission was a routine anti-submarine patrol. The airship would fly west toward the Farallon Islands, patrol the surrounding waters, and eventually return to base. It carried 2 large depth charges, a machine gun, smoke-producing marker devices, radios, parachutes, a life raft, and enough fuel for several hours. Conditions were slightly overcast, but visibility was considered adequate. For the first hour and a half, everything appeared normal. At 7:38 in the morning, Cody radioed that L-8 was about 4 miles east of the Farallon Islands. 4 minutes later came another transmission. "Am investigating suspicious oil slick. Stand by." It was the final confirmed radio message ever sent by the crew. An oil slick could be nothing more than fuel or waste left by a passing vessel. But during wartime, it could also suggest a submarine traveling beneath the surface or damaged nearby. L-8 dropped 2 smoke-producing float lights to mark the location and began circling. The activity attracted attention from vessels in the area. The Liberty ship Albert Gallatin prepared for possible action. A fishing trawler named Daisy Gray began pulling in its nets, concerned that the blimp might drop its depth charges. The sailors watched as L-8 continued circling the slick. Witnesses aboard the vessels reported seeing two men inside the control car. The blimp flew at an altitude of roughly 200 to 300 feet, then descended much closer to the water, perhaps as low as 30 feet. It appeared that the crew was attempting to examine something below. No depth charges were dropped, no submarine was seen, nothing openly dramatic happened. For more than an hour, the blimp circled the area. Then, shortly after 9 o'clock, it released ballast, climbed, and began heading back toward San Francisco. That was the last time anyone reliably reported seeing Cody and Adams aboard. L-8 had stopped answering its radio. At first, this did not cause immediate panic. Radio contact with patrolling blimps was sometimes unreliable, and the aircraft carried enough fuel to return safely. But as the silence continued, concern grew. Search aircraft were dispatched to locate it. At approximately 10:49, a Pan-American aircraft reported seeing L-8 over the Golden Gate Bridge. The blimp appeared to be moving normally toward the bay. A few minutes later, a Navy search plane spotted it near the coast at an altitude of about 2,000 feet. That was unusually high for L-8 and close to the altitude at which pressure valves would automatically release helium to protect the envelope. A crew would normally avoid climbing that high. The blimp then descended into the clouds. Witnesses on the ground soon began noticing that something was wrong. One man photographed L-8 and observed that the envelope appeared bent or sagging. At around 11:15, the blimp approached Ocean Beach south of San Francisco. Its motors were silent. Its helium envelope had lost its normal shape, and the aircraft drifted only a short distance above the water. It briefly touched down near the beach, then moved inland. The control car struck the side of a hill, damaging one engine and knocking one of the depth charges loose. When the heavy weapon rolled away, the sudden loss of weight caused L-8 to rise again. It cleared the hill and continued drifting toward Daly City. Thousands of people eventually saw the partially deflated blimp passing overhead. It scraped roofs. Its dragline trailed across buildings. Firefighters, police officers, motorists, and residents followed it through the neighborhood. At approximately 11:30, L-8 struck a utility pole on Bellevue Avenue. The impact broke electrical equipment and swung the blimp into power lines, sending sparks toward the ground. The envelope was punctured, and the aircraft slowly collapsed across the street and onto parked cars. Rescue workers hurried toward the control car, expecting to find injured airmen inside. Instead, they found an empty cabin. The door was latched fully open. A microphone used to communicate with ships below was hanging outside the doorway. A crewman's hat rested near the flight controls. The radio was functional. The controls and engines were mechanically operable. The ignition switches were still turned on, and the fuel tanks contained enough gasoline for several more hours of flight. 3 parachutes remained aboard. So did the life raft and a briefcase containing classified material. 2 life jackets were missing, but Cody and Adams were required to wear them while flying over water, so their absence was expected. One detail, frequently repeated in later versions of the story, is that the engines were still running when the blimp crashed. The better supported accounts say the motors had stopped by the time L-8 reached the beach, although the ignition switches remained on and the engines themselves were still in working order. Another popular story claimed investigators found warm coffee and a half-eaten sandwich inside. That detail appears to have been a rumor rather than part of the established evidence. The real condition of the control car was mysterious enough without embellishment. The men were gone, but almost everything they would have needed to survive or report an emergency remained behind. The Navy immediately organized a major search. Aircraft and ships searched the water. The Coast Guard assisted. Patrol officers and air raid wardens searched the coastline and the areas beneath the Blimp's route. Despite calm conditions and good visibility, no trace of Cody or Adams was found. There were no bodies, no pieces of clothing, no floating equipment, no distress signal. 2 days after the crash, the Navy convened a formal investigation. Witnesses were questioned, and the aircraft was examined. Investigators found no indication that L-8 had been struck by gunfire or attacked by an enemy. There was no evidence of fire, explosion, or sabotage. The blimp did not appear to have been fully submerged. Its parachutes had not been used. The life raft had not been removed. Although a few witnesses later claimed they saw figures or even a parachute as the blimp approached shore, the physical evidence did not support a parachute escape. All 3 parachutes were still inside the control car. The Navy's investigators concluded that there was no sensible reason for Cody and Adams to abandon an airworthy aircraft voluntarily. Whatever happened was most likely sudden and involuntary. The most grounded explanation begins with a simple accident. One of the men may have fallen from the open cabin while the blimp was descending to examine the oil slick. The door's safety latch was reportedly a concern. If Adams or Cody fell into the water, the remaining crewmen might have reacted immediately rather than stopping to radio for help. He could have lowered the aircraft, stopped the engines to reduce forward movement, used the dangling loudspeaker microphone to call to the man below, and adjusted fuel or ballast in an attempt to hover over him. Then, while leaning from the open doorway or attempting a rescue, the second man may also have fallen. The now unmanned blimp would have become lighter and begun to climb, eventually rising toward its pressure altitude and venting helium before drifting back toward land. This theory can explain several clues: the open door, the dangling microphone, the silence on the radio, the changing altitude, and the fuel or ballast adjustments. It also explains why neither man used a parachute. A parachute would be useless during a sudden fall at extremely low altitude, but the theory still leaves difficult questions. If the first man went overboard, why did the second not send even a brief distress call? Why was the life raft not deployed? Why did some witnesses appear to see 2 men in the control car after the oil slick had already been investigated? And how did both bodies disappear in relatively calm, heavily searched waters? The ocean can hide people quickly, but the complete absence of evidence remains unsettling. Wartime fear produced a more dramatic theory. Perhaps L-8 encountered a Japanese submarine. Cody and Adams might have discovered an enemy vessel, descended to investigate, and been captured or killed. But investigators found no proof that a submarine had been present beneath the oil slick. There was no battle damage to the blimp, no sign that its weapons had been used, and no later enemy record explaining the disappearance. Another theory suggested that the men deliberately defected or arranged their own disappearance. Their service records, families, personal histories, and the circumstances of the flight offered no convincing support for that idea. It also fails to explain how they could have left the blimp unseen over open water without using the life raft or parachutes. Other theories have involved a hidden passenger, a fight between the crewmen, secret experimental equipment, or some unknown event aboard the aircraft. None is supported by solid evidence. The case does not need a sensational explanation to remain disturbing. The Navy's own most plausible reconstruction was already tragic enough. One man fell, the second tried to save him, and both were lost within minutes. But plausible is not the same as proven. L-8 itself did not die that day. The Blimp was repaired and returned to service as a training aircraft. After the war, its control car went back to Goodyear and was eventually attached to another Blimp named America. It spent years flying over sporting events before being retired. The control car was later restored to its wartime appearance and placed on display at the National Naval Aviation Museum. Visitors can stand beside the same cabin from which Cody and Adams disappeared. The machinery survived. The radios survived. The aircraft's history continued for decades. Only the two men were missing. A year after their disappearance, Cody and Adams were legally declared dead. The case was closed without a determined cause. No wreckage could reveal what happened because the aircraft had returned. No final transmission could explain the emergency because the radio had remained silent. No survivor could describe the last moments because both men vanished. That is what makes L-8 different from most aviation mysteries. The vehicle was not lost. It came home. It carried nearly every piece of evidence investigators could have hoped to examine. And still, it gave them no answer. So what do you think happened aboard the ghost blimp? Did one man fall while investigating the oil slick, followed by the other during a desperate rescue attempt? Did the crew encounter something on the water that was never identified? Or is an important piece of the story still missing? Share your theory in the comments, and if you want another case involving military aircraft and men who vanished without a trace, watch our investigation of Flight 19 next. Like this video, subscribe to Strange Dispatch, and ring the bell for more strange history, eerie legends, and impossible cases. Until next time, remember, sometimes the most unsettling disappearance is the one that leaves the vehicle behind.
An empty sea. Roanoke vanished beneath one tree. The Flannan light went dark in the foam, and Flight 19 never made it home.
A Diatlov passed, the tent was torn. 9 fled barefoot into the storm. The L-8 drifted through California air. The blimp came down, but no one was there.
Names in the records, dates on a page, clues left behind from another age. The facts remain, but answers fade. Another file for Strange Dispatch. These are the unexplained, the marks that history could not erase. From the ocean floor to the edge of space, every mystery leaves a trace. These are the unexplained,
Real events with missing names.
we follow the evidence case by case. Strange Dispatch investigates. The Voynich manuscript ship guards its tongue. The Phaistos disc remains unsung. The Piri Reis map charts distant shores, while Roman dodecahedrons hide what they were for.
The Antikythera gears still turn. The copper skull names gold to unearth. The Nebra sky disc captured the night, and the Nazca line stretched beyond human sight.
Bronze and parchment, symbols in stone, messages written by hands unknown. The objects speak, but meanings detach. Another file for strange dispatch. These are the unexplained, the marks that history could not erase. From the ocean floor to the edge of space, every mystery leaves a trace. These are the unexplained,
Real events with missing names.
we follow the evidence case by case. Strange dispatch investigates. Children came to Woolpit town. The Flatwoods monster watched from the ground. At Rendlesham forest, lights moved through trees, and Lonnie Zamora saw something leave. The wow! Signal called once through the sky. The Tau's hum keeps asking why. Tunguska burned without leaving a scar, and fast radio bursts arrive from afar.
Casper House, a step from the unknown. The Kensington Roomstone carried a claim in stone. The dancing plague filled Strasbourg streets, while footsteps ended in frozen sleet. The Bermuda Triangle swallowed a name. The Somerton man left no one to blame. The Shroud of Turin, the Zodiac Code. Every answer opens another road. These are the unexplained, the stories set in tea could not contain. From ancient machines to the lights above, from vanished crews to the maps they left us. These are the unexplained, Not invented tales or carnival
games. We search the archive, follow each trace. Strange dispatch investigates.
Mary Celeste at Love Pass.
The Voynich pages,
Ghost Blimp's path.
the evidence waits.
The questions remain.
Strange dispatch